Hey, it's Joe West from the West Barn with
Mike Shimshack.
And our guest today, very special guest, is Craig Garber from everyonelovesguitar.com. Welcome.
Hey, thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me. Thanks, Mike.
We're excited to have you on. I want to tell people a little about who you are, but before I want to tell them what we're talking about. I was on your podcast, which was a lot of fun, and even though the name says Everyone Loves Guitar, it really is. It's spread out to a lot more content. There's bass players. You had a whole list of multi-instrumentalists as well as authors and producers and engineers. You've been helping me with our podcast, just sort of like we're talking, just shooting shop. And I've learned so much in the little bit of time that I talked to you. I wanted to bring you on, and you were willing to do that, to talk to us about, what it looks like. Your podcast now is right on that pivotal point where it's now self-sustaining and it requires maybe full-time activity. So that's a huge leap. If there's 1 million podcasts, I can imagine there's only a small handful that are actually able to support themselves and the people that run it as a living. So that's something we all should be shooting for, and thought it'd be really interesting if you would be willing to share some of those secrets with us to do that. And you were kind enough to do that. So thank you. You're a good dude.
My pleasure, man.
Let me tell people a little bit about you. What I love about your story is that it's so recent. It's like you've only been playing guitar for 4 years, right?
Yeah.
And you've only had the podcast since 2017. So, it really...
Almost 3 years.
For a guy who, you could tell you're a guy that loves music, read a little about your history, about how you would acquire music and what you would do. And, born in the Bronx, but used to take the train in to shine shoes or do foot massages. Worse.
No. I was a foot massages.
What? Did I read it wrong? Let me get
just with my wife, man. No.
I didn't be tickling or nothing.
I was a foot messenger. This is like...
Big difference.
I'm showing off that quality education.
I hope he's not reading your legal contracts, Mike.
Dude, I was thinking, exactly. I was picturing you like at the base of the World Trade Center, like where they start and see you massaging people's feet. I'm like, I guess that's a thing. Okay.
Yo, loose foot massages. Instead of loose joints. Yeah, that could have been a thing. Maybe you're ahead of your time.
Can you believe I've made it this far in life? I read like the first 3 letters of a word. Well, okay, so foot messenger makes much more sense to me now in New York City, and it's not as creepy, quite honestly. I didn't really even delve. I didn't even judge. That's how cool I am. I didn't even judge when I read that. But just a really great history. But all through it was just you sort of kind of hustling and becoming, right? And doing these different things and slowly succeeding, just like this war of attrition, like everybody does. But you've applied that into your podcast. You've applied that into your love for music. You've sort of coalesced in everything that you've done through all the financial planning and all the sales and marketing stuff and identifying and helping people. You wrote a book, all these things finally funneled their way into your love and your passion.
Yeah.
We tell people to do what they do at night whenever they're off. That's what you should be trying to do for your day job, right? The things that you're passionate about. And you eventually have done that. So congratulations to you. I can't believe you've only been playing guitar for 4 years.
Well, if I played, you would very easily believe it.
Look at all those guitars behind you. You've got to be great.
Yeah, you got some nice guitars behind you, man.
Thank you. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite back there behind you?
Oh, the 335, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You see what I'm wearing today in honor of it?
That's right. Yeah, man, I appreciate that.
My Bixby.
We appreciate that.
That's a B7 you got on there. That's a nice one. Okay, so the podcast has interviewed tons of people, from Joe Satriani, Steve Vai, Rick Emmett. I mean, I'm looking through all of the categories here. LA session players, Nashville session players, UK session players, Muscle Shoals, metal, just all over the place, and tons of big names over here. And I don't really, that's a real interesting thing we talk about a little bit later, how you get people to actually come on before you're a big podcast, chicken or the egg, right?
Foot massage.
Foot massages.
Yeah, I give them a foot massage.
Can you do that via Skype?
Bam, man. It's like instant, like about 2 seconds in.
Dude, I'm so dumb. I'm so dumb.
Now, if we meet, that's gonna become up.
This is the true testament of like our commitment to being real on this podcast, because anyone else would have stopped this podcast and restarted it.
Oh, look at the time. I got to go.
When I said foot massage, his face, he was just like, what's he talking about?
Yeah. He's a pro.
I'm a real pro. But also fiddle player, saxophone, vocals, keys, percussion. So all these different categories, and then now you're venturing out into things like producers and songwriters and best-selling authors. And I assume, that's because you want to be compelling and you want to tell compelling stories. It grew from just being a guitar podcast and sort of is evolving, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much. It wasn't like any of that was planned. I just said, let me try this, because I got referred to different people. And then I just, it was weird because I had just said to myself, I said, man, I'd love to get an author on. And then I interview Jimbo Mathis from Squirrel Nut Zippers, and he goes, hey man, my best friend is Michael Farris Smith. He's a best-selling author. I'm like, oh my God, do it. And that's the way this whole thing has worked. It's been very bizarre like that.
Is this all referrals? Is that pretty 100%. Much where it is now?
Yeah. Well, now what happens, I get a lot of PR people, and I don't really deal well with them because it's a lot of rigmarole, and I'm not really good with that. And so I mean, there's a few that I work with, but it's just extra work because then you got to do everything through them, and I'm not good with that.
At what point did you reach that threshold where you started to get PR people reaching out versus, because I'm assuming you have to reach a certain status before they start showing interest.
Yeah, it was really funny. All of a sudden, like a Friday afternoon, I had like 10 people and emailing me, and I was like, "Oh my!" Honestly, to me, just because my personality, I'm so like, efficiency and time is, the most important commodity that you have for me, right? So I'm like, "Oh my God, this is wasting my time." And apparently, what happened was somebody that I had worked with posted my name on a PR forum, and it was everybody. But I think that was probably like. As far as number of episodes, somewhere between 400 and 500. Something like that. Yeah.
Well, I can tell you this. It's and you probably don't even realize this, but like I've done a ton of interviews / podcasts, and they aren't well organized. Yours, from the time you reached out to me the first time to the time that we did it and then closed out, and then your questions to me afterwards, like, hey, who do you think might be good for my podcast? And then following up, and then when you aired it and then had a Facebook premiere, and it's just like there are a million things that you're doing that might seem really natural to you but aren't in the musician lizard brain, right?
Yeah. I'm pretty I know the value of building systems for things,
right?
And yeah,
and this is the same thing, right? This is a business you're building, so it follows the rules of, hey, put a marketing plan together and then pursue it and execute it, right?
Yeah.
What is your background, Craig?
I actually graduated school. I was a CPA.
Oh, no,
believe it or not, and then I got into sales, and then I got into financial planning, and I wound up working for myself doing that. And then along the way there, I started developing an interest in direct response marketing. So I wound up hooking up with a guy I lived in Fort Lauderdale at the time. I wound up hooking up with a guy who was pretty well known in the industry. Because I thought I would do well with direct marketing because I'm pretty intuitive, and I also understands what motivates people. And that's, to be a good salesperson, you have to, those things have to sort of come to you. It, like playing music, if you have a good ear, it makes your life a lot better. It's a lot less work. And so I got involved in direct marketing, and for the last 22 years almost, I've been running a marketing consulting firm and writing ad copy. So, and I've worked in like 110, 115 industries at this point. So, that's my background.
So real quick, I wanted to mention this earlier on the Apple podcast charts. And I don't even know if you know this, your podcast is currently number 4 in the Netherlands for music interviews, United States in the top 50, Portugal, Saudi Arabia. So all over your podcast has the moniker of success. I mean, that is the tough thing, right? So let's face it. People that they say, hey, I've got something to say. I'm compelling. I'm going to do it. And they go out and they buy a microphone and they get together for a couple weeks and they talk to their friends. And then they've got these recordings that they're kind of like trying to figure out how to upload, and the technology and the audio levels and all that. God forbid it has video, right? So, but then they quit probably after 8 episodes, if that.
Yeah.
Just because it wasn't what they thought it was going to be. Tell me, like, if we want to encourage, my goal here is like, okay, I could watch this podcast and I could not make the mistakes that Craig made with
Yeah.
Everyone Loves Guitar. It's like, what is it? And now I'm sure you set up a marketing plan. Tell me how you implemented it, what you thought were maybe some of the ways it would go and the way it changed. Like, give us sort of like, help us figure out what you need to do to get an audience. We very much are like, that's what we're trying to do.
Okay. First of all, make sure you go to YouTube, distribute your podcast on YouTube right away. So we always put our show on YouTube, but we didn't do video until like 500 episodes because I made the critical mistake of thinking I was my customer. Meaning, there's a thing in marketing where people will do certain things that you may not do, but there's an old adage, you are not your customer. So don't think you are. So here's what I mean by that. I look at my show like I have two customers. I have my guests and I have my listening audience. And so my goal is to satisfy both of those people to the greatest extent I possibly can. Excuse me. My headphones. So my goal is to satisfy both of those customers as best as I possibly can. So with respect to interviewing guests, because the show is not superfluous, it's a very deep, we have legit conversations. It's not this is not a gear show. What string gauge to use, what kind of speakers to use. I wouldn't even know what to do with that. Can I curse?
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't even know what to do with that fucking information. Okay, great. So you play 11s. How is that going to help me? This is a personal development show. How did you get from point A in your life to point B? And most of my guests tend to be over 50, definitely over 40. So a lot of guys would come on the show, and I noticed people were very preoccupied with how they look, right? Because you guys are performers. This is a something that runs through you all the time, okay? And so I was concerned that putting the show on video would make people more uncomfortable to talk about these personal interviews. What happened was I kept getting listeners saying, dude, why don't you make videos? And I said, you know what? 50 million Frenchmen can't be wrong. Let me just do this. If it doesn't work, we don't do it. And first we tested the metrics, and it was like 20 to 40 times more. It pulled much better. Your response with a video will outpull audio exponentially to some extent. And it was fine. Nobody ever said a word. And in fact, in close to 750 interviews, there's only been, I think, one or two people that would not go on video. And this was before we even had videos. They didn't even want me to see them. So, that's like their issue, whatever that is. I don't really care. But so definitely go on video, because YouTube is a really big magnet, The other thing is, I would look to learn, once you're on YouTube, how to optimize those videos, both headlines, tags, and descriptions. And so you need to do some research online to figure out how to do that, because
and there's a couple programs that you and I were talking about. You turned me on to TubeBuddy, right?
Yeah. The two I would look at are something called TubeBuddy and vidIQ. And they are both, like, I use Chrome, but I think they are extensions that you could use, whether you use Safari, Chrome. God, it's been so long since I've used it.
I think it's just Chrome, because it won't work on my Safari.
It won't. Okay. So there's extensions for Chrome, but they also work on, gosh, what's that other one? It's been so long since I've used it.
Firefox or Foxfire.
Yes, thank you. The Firefox, right. So they're basically extensions that have not full capacity, but pretty good capacity to test them out, to see which one you like and how to use them, that are free, and then you can make the commitment to buying them. Okay.
And they'll do things like, if you type in Craig Garber, it will say, hey, these are great tags to put, and they'll rate them. And so you don't have to just like use your brain, and how difficult that is trying to find something. It will suggest a million and rate them for you, as well as tell you if your title's too long or things like that. Correct?
Correct. And you also need to, one thing you mentioned, that I was tied things together from my other careers, my other experience, like from a marketing standpoint, you also want to try to put, the two things that people respond most to as it relates to marketing are self-interest and curiosity. Meaning, if you can make somebody curious about something that they are interested in, or that there's a benefit to them, they want to know more. So you want to try to put the title, not a clickbait title, but something that someone's going to click on. So for example, a lot of my guests talk about getting sober. And so, the headline might be so-and-so's interview, getting sober in the middle of a major crisis, something like that, but just something that prompts curiosity.
I love that.
Yeah, that's really important.
The one thing that I've kind of been learning through trying to make film is that you don't ever really talk about yourself. You talk about yourself in a way that people see you and them. So it's like, hey, if I'm talking to Craig today, it's like I lean on their selfishness of wanting to learn how to be a better podcaster, but they get to learn about you, and the whole thing is about you. But the reality is they see themselves in you, what they can get out of it, which has been
content.
It's been a huge change in the way I make films or the stories I try to tell or how I try to tell them, even as a songwriter. It really has changed my perspective on that. Real quick, let's go back because so you make a podcast, you have audio files, you may have video files. Okay. So are you using Libsyn? Are you using something to manage your podcasts? Let's start from the beginning, because that would kind of be the beginning, right?
Yeah. So there's a bunch. So the way podcasts work is there's literally hundreds of apps and hubs that distribute podcasts. So you can't, I guess you can manually, upload 100 different things, but there's no sense in doing that. That's like, it just doesn't make sense. So you have to look at yourself like a distributor of goods and services, right? You can sell through a retail store, or that has access to thousands and thousands of customers all across the world in hundreds of stores, or you can sell one unit at a time to each of those customers. Now, you'll make a little more money, but you probably won't when it comes down to it, because your customer acquisition costs, you got to compete against the next guy. Don't do any of that shit. Stick it in Target. Let them do the work for you, and you make less money, and you're a wholesaler. So you have
Which ones do you recommend?
TVs?
No, which ones do you recommend as distribution centers for your podcast?
Right. So I've always used Libsyn.
Yeah.
And the reason I went with them is because, number one, they've been around the longest. And in the last 3 months alone, which I'm sure you know this, there's been over 100,000 new shows a month. Because why? Everybody's home. It's COVID. Man, I'm going to do a podcast. And so literally in the last 3 months, there's been over 110,000 new shows a month.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So what happens is it's kind of like, when anything, back in the, when large cap stocks were hot in the early 2000s, what was everybody doing? Becoming a stockbroker and a financial planner. When real estate was hot, or mortgages, right? Before the market, everybody was a mortgage broker. Well, so you have all these cottage industries coming up. Everybody's now going to try to compete with, hey, come to me and I'll distribute your podcast. I didn't want to deal with any of that. I wanted to spend my money and pay a few more bucks for better quality service and more reliable. So I work with Libsyn, and I kept seeing people, again, this is just, there's no judgment with this. This is just training. I would go on forums and see people bitching about, hey, why doesn't this distributor work? And they're free. That's exactly why. You can't get anything. You get,
and they're cheap. It's like for Libsyn, you can get in for enough to do an hour podcast 4 times a month for $20.
Oh my God. Yeah. And
we pay $40 for ours.
Right.
For the 8 that we do a month.
Right. And mine, we're dropping 5 shows a week at, let's say, an average of 2 hours. It's less than $100.
Right.
So, that's pretty cheap. I've never had a problem.
It's part of the price of doing business. I tell you what, it sold me on it, and it's great marketing on them. When you go to their page, it's like you see Joe Rogan, you see Adam Carolla, you see all the biggest names in podcasting. So you're like, well, if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me, and it's affordable.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely.
So you don't upload video there, do you? You go right to YouTube.
No, I think you can, but I have somebody who does all this stuff for me now. You get to a certain point, you cannot do all this, nor do you want to. you know what it's like. You do the stuff that you like doing and the stuff you hate doing, you hire someone else to help you with. So I think we upload direct to YouTube.
Yeah.
Libsyn does have something, but you can't control when it's dropped. And I wanted to control, and there's some other issues that for us, it made sense to just upload direct.
Yeah. And plus the bandwidth would kill you.
Yes.
In charge of. So audio goes through Libsyn, which distributes it. You put it up one place, fill out like a bunch of just like generic stuff in it. Then it posts it everywhere for you to Deezer, to Apple Music or Apple iTunes, Apple Podcasts, to Google Play, everywhere around the world. And then when you have video, you go right to YouTube and you do it, and you use TubeBuddy and or vidIQ to optimize that video. And that pretty much takes care of your distribution.
That takes care of your non-social media distribution.
Okay.
That takes care of your direct to consumer distribution.
So that would put it in the stores. Now you're going to use social media to get people to the stores to view it.
Bingo.
But before we do that, because I think we're up to speed now, going back to where you were talking about, what did I drag you back off of when I said, let's go back?
No, I was just talking about uploading to YouTube, and I was talking about the cost of Libsyn. Just like in general, when you're in business, you can't always look to save money. In business, and Joe, you know this, Mike, you get what you pay for most of the time. And if you're looking to save $8 a month, man, you're going to have downtime. If you have 15 minutes of downtime because of that $8 savings, you lost.
Yeah. And we're not, this stuff is priced very competitively. It's not it's not at a premium.
No, far from it.
Okay. So go on from there. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, it's cool. So
the compelling content issue, it's like, okay, when you're building your podcast, this is where you were talking about what it was like to say, okay, who are my customers? My customers are the people that listen, as well as the guests that I have, right?
Yes.
Knowing your customers and all that. Continue on with that. I'm sorry. I just want to start from the beginning.
No. So I always I have two customers, like you said, my guests and my listeners. Now, as far as the listeners go, you have to, first of all, you have to learn your audience. And who's your audience? Again, your customers and your listeners and your interviewees. But there were subtle things about the music business that I had to learn so that I could work within acceptable parameters. For example, I could easily, on a YouTube video, put up a headline that says something like this: so-and-so, my marriage tanked, my mother died, and my career went to hell all in 1 month. I would not do that, because that's just not cool to do in this industry, and I don't want to put somebody off just to get more listeners. So you really have to understand, this is not marketing where you're selling widgets. This is people's lives, man. And so I take that pretty seriously, because if someone's kind enough to come on my show and give me 2 hours of their time, and then on top of that, open themselves up and share intimacies with me, I feel that's a gift that they've given me, and I need to honor that and not be a dick and say, hey, man, I want to get a shit ton of listeners off that. Of course, I would like to get more listeners, not at their expense, though. So there's a way to do this, and I'm saying this because it's really important, because if you want, the thing that has made my show grow is all the support of not only the listeners, but my guests, beyond anything I could have expected. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why they've been so supportive.
That's a really good point. That's a long game approach.
That is a long game,
man. I just think it's the right thing to do. I couldn't, I'm not that guy. I mean, it takes a lot to be vulnerable and open up. And then to have some asshole just like, National Enquirer your shit. That's right. Anyway, so I'm saying that because you need to take that into consideration. Your communication skills are really important. And if you want your whoever you interviewed, your guest, if you would like them to share your stuff, but it's inappropriate or you're like exploiting them, no one's going to share it, nor should they, quite frankly.
Good luck getting guests.
Yeah, good luck getting guests. And just like, why would, so you really got to think of these things. And that's why you have to know who your customers are. And I've known since day one, that's who my customers were, both of these folks.
Did you find that your customers changed? Like you thought you were going to build this podcast and you imagined who your customers were, build a plan to go capture them. Did you find that, oh, wait a minute, this is not my audience. This is my audience?
No, from a listener standpoint.
Yeah. Like I guess for the success of the podcast, it would be your audience, right? Your listeners. Did you
I
find that they were who you expected them to be?
I had no idea who they were going to be. I knew nothing about.
Oh.
Yeah. So I didn't see, I've done enough business. Like, okay, we once had a business where we were, I put a plan together for loan officers. It was right when it was specifically to target people who had interest rate only loans that were about to reset and add 8 basis points to the product. So we had a plan to attract them and to get people to do refinancing with these loan officers. Well, we thought going into the thing, we were going to have a lot of new, younger or short-term officers. It was not like that at all. It was all across the board. And I've had so many niche in consulting and in individual projects I've worked in. I've had so many of this that I have no clue who my customer is. I know I'm going to learn. But what it turned out was my customers, most of my guests are, like I said, over 40. That's who my listeners are. Unbeknownst to me, that turned out to be a huge benefit for advertisers because most podcasts are millennial driven. I didn't know any of this. This was just how it worked out. Most podcasts are millennial driven. And if you're a millennial listening, no disrespect, but who's got discretionary dollars? Baby boomers, peep Generation X. And 85% of my listeners are of those two.
And you're finding that data from Libsyn or from YouTube?
No, from Google Analytics.
Okay, Google Analytics.
So I look at
from your website?
Yeah, I look at who goes to my website. There is an assumption there that the people going to the website are the same people listening, but I don't think that's because you can't get per click data on this. It's just not available. Like who clicks and who listens, that is not available right now. But I have to assume that by and large, those numbers will extrapolate. Who's going to my website? Well, people who aren't listening to the show aren't going to the website. Right. And also on YouTube, that data is available. And I'll tell you what's really interesting on YouTube, some data. It wasn't until like recently, 100% of YouTube listeners were all men.
I know that. Yeah.
100%.
Wow, that's crazy.
And now it's like maybe 95, 96.
I heard that YouTube was just dominated by males.
Well, for this niche, for sure. I mean, I'm sure if I was like making cat videos, it'd be different.
Oh, that makes a huge difference for you too. Whenever you do go to Google Ads and you decide who your demo is, it's not going to be females. Right.
Well,
why waste money?
Right. So like, somebody
know your audience.
Yeah. Cause somebody approached me something about, wanting to advertise weight loss. And I said, who's your primary customer? And they were like, oh, it's like 50% women. I'm like, man, I got to be honest with you. I'm not your show. This is and on the download side, it's 75% male. So even there, and those numbers are actually, the YouTube numbers are almost last month overtook the download. So, it's really primarily a male dominated show. I don't know why. I do have female guests, but whatever.
So you're pivoting, you're getting all this data. And when you're talking, it's literally, as an artist, it really pushes all the wrong buttons for me.
I know.
Because it's like I'm listening to this dude tell me like, okay, you got to get Libsyn, you got to learn how to tag and get this other program that interfaces. Then you've got to do YouTube, and you've got to do all this other stuff with YouTube and these programs, and then you've got to have a website, and then you got to figure out who your audience is, and then you got to look at demographics and pitch. And I'm immediately, the guitar player in me says, "Oh, I need to get a manager to do this," right?
Yeah.
But we all know that a manager this will never work.
A manager would never do that. No, but here's the other way you could look at this. Look, you don't need all this stuff day one. You probably don't even need it 6 months into it. I'll tell you right now. So here's something interesting. And again, I've done so many different projects. That's the only reason I know this, right? If you go on forums, like, there's plenty of forums. Let me learn about, work with other podcasters. 90% of this conversation is going to be about, man, which mic do I need to get? Or I bought this new thing. It's $600. And all this time, it's like, I'm going to take my first guitar lesson. So I bought a Les Paul Custom.
You're right. I know what you mean. Yeah.
And you know what? I had a $70 microphone until 600 episodes. I refused because I wanted to get proof of concept that I even had a show, that somebody was even interested in this shit. And you know what happened in the first 600 issues? Not one person said, "Hey, your sound sucks." Only one time when it did suck, because it was on Skype, and it was with Steve Lukather. It sounded like he's fucking sucking helium, but that was not the mic. So everybody was like, "Hey, what happened to your mic?" And I think I made an announcement in front to preempt that. Yeah. But that's it. And then after 600 episodes, I said, I need to probably get a better quality.
That makes me feel much better, because the overwhelm factor, and I know exactly what you're talking about. It's like your parents buy you a global guitar, like my dad did from a pawn shop.
Yeah.
And it hurt my, it was like slide level, dobro level high off the fretboard. But it's like, this is good. This is good news, because my musician brain thinks like, okay, I can do this. What I need to do, and before we end this podcast, I'll go over the technology, how simple it is to actually get a quality recording for podcasting. So we're talking more about once you're done with the podcast with you. But you grow into it. It's like you look back 20 years later and you've got a bunch of guitars hanging on your wall that
it also proves that content is king, right? It's not the tools. It's like, I mean, we, on our end, you hear kids making these records in GarageBand that comes with their Apple, and it smokes some of my productions. I got $1,000 worth of shit.
Proof of concept. I think what he said was really insightful. It's like, okay, there's something here. We're on the right path.
Great content that supersedes everything.
I love that you also said that you didn't know, because my assumption was this dude knew who his audience was, and he set his marketing plan up to get the audience. How else in my small brain, that's how that works. But you were like, no, you find out who your audience is by dipping your toe in the water.
Yeah, I had no idea anything. And you don't know, you're not going to know that for maybe 50 to 100 episodes.
Right.
And
so you're gathering all this data, and you're gathering it via Google Analytics. You're looking at some of the stats on Libsyn. You're looking at YouTube stats. You're generally finding out who your audience is. Yes. Once you find that out, that at that point, it's like, oh, now we're going to throw gas on the fire because you know what it is? Or,
well, the other thing I also did was I have always been a big proponent of talking to people. Like, if someone hires me to do marketing, the first thing I do is ask them questions. Why do your customers buy this product? Why do they buy this over other product? Now, many times people know, but sometimes people just don't know, because, they produce X, they make widgets. They don't know about why, it beats the shit out of them. So I've always gone out and said, okay, man, hey, why don't you give me a list of like 10 customers, and then I'll call and ask questions. So look, man, in spite of, this fucking phone that everybody texts with, nothing beats hopping on a call or even exchanging a 10-minute dialogue on Facebook Messenger to find out stuff. And I always did that. Hey, what do you like about the show? And then people I always had my contact, fill the form out. And so people start emailing me. And so I answer, and I remember before I started the show, I was listening to a podcast, and I think it had the guys who started the Airbnb on there. And they said, man, we built this community one person at a time. And that stuck in my head. And I said, okay, cool. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to be nice to everybody when they come in. There's going to become a point in time I can't do it because I just don't have the time. But until that point comes, I'm going to answer all the comments. I go through all we have a ton of engagement on YouTube. I try to answer everybody. If they're an asshole, I don't. But that's honestly, we get very, very few people like that. Everybody's really nice and really cool. And so I'll have dialogue like, hey, what did you like about this? Or after a while, you don't even have to, just being open to it. It's weird, people. And I think because of the nature of the show, because it's a very open show, people tend to like, I'll get, I listened to this story. I just want you to know it touched me because I had this and my grandfather did this and and I knew this guy. And it's like amazing, but I pay attention to all that shit. And then I'll go back and you write me a note like that, unless it's something where there's the real reason you're writing is, and here's a link to my band. Can you check them out? Which, look, I don't have the time to do that. I'm sorry. But I try to respond back because I appreciate that one person at a time thing. I appreciate, man, this guy, as busy as I am, took the time out of his day to send me a nice note. I may not respond that day, but once a week, I do respond to people.
In learning who that is, in learning what's working, what's not working.
Yeah.
So if we're at a point now where we've got content that we believe is compelling and we've got it recorded and it's now up and distributed via Libsyn and to YouTube, and it's configured correctly, what then? That is the giant silence, the abyss of spend $10,000 to record your demo, and then what do you do with it once you have it and you're playing gigs?
Yeah. Okay. So, first of all, know that if your content is compelling and if your description of what you have is accurate and clear, you've got to communicate clearly. That for certain people, that is a big problem for a lot of people, and there's nothing wrong with that. Get some help. Make sure that the message you're communicating is accurate and it reflects what you're truly presenting, because the worst thing you can do, and this is a cardinal sin, even if you're just running an ad. How many times have you clicked on an ad and it's clickbait and it's like, free sex, and you're like, that's interesting. And it's like, do you have life insurance? It's like, what the fuck? I mean, right? Like, nothing is going to piss you off because fucking people don't want to waste their time. So you've got, and the other thing is, right? Most people think, who's your customer? Everybody's my customer. That is not true. Everybody is not your fucking customer. And if everybody is your customer, the reality is nobody is your customer, because you're not saying anything that calls out any particular group of people that they should take notice of what you're offering.
Right. Interest and curiosity, you said, right?
Self-interest and curiosity.
So those are specific things. It can't be everybody.
It's not. If you have a podcast on cats, everybody loves cats. No, everybody doesn't fucking love cats. People hate cats. I like cats, but some people don't. So just say, today we talk about, cat behavior with noted, veterinarian behavioral specialist. This, have you ever wondered why your cat lays on his back and wants to get pet? Have you, how come your cat chews paper? Like, be accurate, because there are a lot of people that be like, yeah, man, I got a cat. That's pretty, but there are people that just like to watch lion videos. That's not your audience. It's close, but it's not your audience. And
that's super interesting.
Yeah, you have to be on target.
Well,
man.
I think we're also desperate to get views that we almost don't care where they come from, because views are like, but the right views are what I'm learning. Even with music, when I'm pitching music, it's like the right recipient is even if you have Keith Urban's phone number in your phone, don't send him something unless you think it's perfect for him. You'll ruin the opportunity. You'll pollute your audience. Yeah.
Okay. So you wrote #1 hits for Keith. Are you going to go and say, hey man, all you metalheads, fucking check this out? Right. That would ruin you, man. No one would ever listen to you again. No, I mean,
but that's not as simple as you would think, because we're so pre-programmed to have like, hey, we just want the view count to go up, and we don't care if people are on for 1 second or for 10 minutes. Now we're learning, because YouTube is rewarding you for being on for 10 minutes, right? They're rewarding people that put that content. We're learning the hard lesson, which is, hey, you have to have something to say and you have to be compelling, and you've got to get that to the right people.
Yeah, and look at it
Very
like
nuanced.
this. You don't just want views. Look at it this way. You're looking to hook up with somebody on a dating site, right? So you put Tom Selleck's picture on there and you look like me. And then, you go on your date and I show up and what do you think's going to happen? You're not going to get a second date, man. It's just not going to work.
Yeah.
So you don't just want views. You want the right views. You want the right people listening, because those people will become your sales force. They will turn all their buddies onto it. Another thing I always ask people is, it's not on anymore. How did you find out about the show? And most of the time it was either, iTunes recommended this based on what I listened to, or my friend so-and-so, I'm friends with so-and-so, and he or she recommended it, or I'm friends with this guest that you had, or I'm a big fan and I saw that and it was recommended to me. You're not going to get any of those things unless you're being, man, you're having a relationship with people. Do you start relationships off lying?
Right.
That's not a good, if you do, just note to self, don't do that. It's not good. It's not productive.
Yeah, great point. And I was brought to you from Near Z.
That's right.
Near said, hey, I was on this podcast. He sent me a link. So, it does work. And it's like for every person that you send there all the wrong people showing up ruins your metrics. Like we had a podcast that we still don't understand it to this day, but somehow
tell me about this.
It started to go up and get thousands and thousands and thousands of views. And we're like, what is going on with this? Turns out it was some website where you would go onto the website and you would watch, and for all the YouTube videos you would watch, you would get a coin. It was all compiled in this website. We hadn't put it on there. The guest hadn't put it on there. To the best of my knowledge, it was a URL that was one letter off and was our video, but it ruined the metrics for me when I went to look at YouTube to say, hey, who's our audience? Are they girls? Are they boys? Where are they coming from? What countries? And what's the demographic? What's the age? Where's the outside web pages are coming from? It ruined all of it. So, the right audience is critical, because start making the decisions to market your podcast around the data from that.
Correct.
And you might as well throw your money out the car window.
Correct. And the other thing is, like on YouTube, it counts how long people watch. Like we had, Dan Baird?
No.
Dan Baird. Okay.
Was he from Georgia Satellites?
Yeah, right.
Oh,
So I had Dan on the show. Amazing guy. Really freaking cool. He had a 3-hour interview and he was he's sharp. He's funny. He's very he's honest and he does things his way. And he's just a really good person. So I was checking out the stats on his video because I was looking at something. 18% of all the people that listened to that on YouTube made it to the end.
Wow.
To the end. Now, if you have a situation where, you're being duplicitous, or like that thing happened with you guys, and like 2 seconds into it, it's going to be a massive fall off. YouTube penalizes you. Now, this was a one-off thing. I would highly doubt you're going to get penalized. They know these things exist. But if you have consistent stuff like that, and you're kind of doing link bait stuff, they're never going to promote your video where, they're never going to put you, you should it's not different than when you go to Amazon. Oh, people who bought this also bought this. YouTube does the same thing. On the side, here's all the videos you should probably check out based on your likes and dislikes.
Do you do clips, Craig? Do you also do obviously the full length and then clips as well?
I don't, but if I had more time or staff that, like, my guy is good at doing certain things, that is a good thing to do. Now, it's interesting you said that. I have an interview coming out next Friday, I think, with a guy named Adam Rogers, who's a really great guitar player out of the city. And during his conversation, he said something that I thought was really profound. It really helped me. And so I said, I just cut it out. It's maybe a minute or two. I cut it out for me to listen to it. But I said, I'm going to put that clip on Instagram and Facebook and see what happens. Because it's a pretty profound thing that he said. And I thought a lot of people, because really I think people will get something out of it. If it turns out they come to the show, great. But I just thought it was some information that would help people.
It would make me click onto the full version of that too. It's like, hey, this is a little
right.
pre-roll that.
Right.
Okay, so you've got this content. It's ready to go. You're talking about how it is. Like, how do you get an audience? How do you market it? What do you do with it now? You know, I want you to address sort of like, okay, your social marketing as well as your website, you know, as well as all these destinations like Apple Music and you know, Deezer. So tell us how you manage that, where you point people, the priorities, and how you do it.
So we did again, just because of my background, I know how to run ads on Facebook and Instagram. And that's what I do. I've been doing this for 22 years. So we ran ads to get listeners. So a couple of things you can do. I'm always looking for opportunities to create ads, right? So some of the ads I run, let's say I had Steve Vai on there or Joe Satriani. Those guys have pretty big audiences. I ran ads to attract the people that listen to Satriani and Vai, let's say, putting a snippet of the show on there, and then, you know, for more, click here. Okay. The bad thing about podcasts, it's really hard to track. There's no mechanism. When you make the click, it's really hard to track. Now, I had a friend of mine sort of embed another Facebook pixel, and this is really like going to blow the musician brain. It's still not the most logical thing. So you have to just sort of make a leap of faith with some of this stuff. Okay. But then I was at NAMM one year, and do you know Sean Tubbs?
Yeah, the guitar player, sure.
Yeah. So Sean, I had him on my show a long time ago, and I ran into him at NAMM. We were talking. He goes, "Hey man, it was really funny. Some guy who has another show, some sort of show. I don't know what he does. He comes up to Sean. He goes, 'Who the fuck is this Craig Garber, and how does he get people to talk to him for so long? And how does he get these big names?' And like, I never thought of that because I don't want to think about that. But you know, he goes, he's not in the music business. You know, I'm not even a good guitar player. But so I wrote an ad that said something like, I could pull up. The headline said something like,
who the fuck is Craig Garber?
Yeah, right. Who's Craig Garber, and how does he get all the? So I tested a bunch of headlines. That was one of them. Another one was, why do guitar players love this man? Another one was, why do guitar players hate this man? So I ran a bunch of ads, and it basically said, like, you know, what that guy said. I'm like, okay, let me try to run that as an ad. You know, he you know, how does he got, and at the time it was only like 200 or 300 guests. How does he gotten all these names? And I listed some of the bigger names I've had on the show, and we got a bunch of clicks on it because you get to test your performance of the ads. And then I got a control and I ran it. So you have to run ads. It's like anything else. People don't realize this. You know, one of the first questions when someone hires me to work with them is, you know, how much are you paying for, you know, what does a customer cost you? And they're like, huh? Like, what does a customer cost you? For you to run advertising and get a customer, what does it cost you? And the reason why that question is so important is, if you're selling pack of gum and that sells for $2 and it costs you $7 to get a customer, that's not a business. You better find another way to market this stuff, because that's not a business that's sustainable. You know, and I know there's one guy out there saying, yeah, but if we sold like 100,000 of them, it'd be really good. No, it's not. The math doesn't work, right? So you have to sort of, in the beginning, when you're not having advertising and all that stuff, this is an investment you have to make in yourself, in your business.
Great point.
You know, but I was fortunate because there's not a lot of guys running ads like that. You know, I don't think the competition's real heavy. If you are in a cat podcast, it's going to be thicker. So if you're selling life insurance, if you're a tax accountant, but at the same time, the customer value of a life insurance policy, average life policy, may be worth $3,500 for you, which means you could afford to spend $3,499 and still be profitable. So, you know, you just got to know your numbers. In the beginning, if you don't have a product and you're doing like an interview show, you just have to make the investment or not, or accept that it's going to be a long, slow haul. And that's cool.
And you're saying that you shouldn't even start marketing your podcast till you have at least 50?
No, I was saying you're not going to know who your audience is until you have at least 50.
When should you start marketing it?
Depends what you're selling and how much it costs for the ads. You know, the best way to market a show is to, first of all, if you're doing interview shows, you have to assume, if you do a good job, that the one of the advantages of doing an interview show is the other person's going to want to share it. So that's free marketing in a sense. Mike, your jail picture is up there.
Yeah, sorry. My phone, my battery's getting a little low. It's all good.
So that's one advantage of doing an interview show, which I did not know going into this. I realized that, oh, this is cool, man. If I was just like talking myself, which I wouldn't get much joy out of that, nor would anybody else, I think. It's who's going to share this. But, you know, when you do an interview show, that's one benefit. But if you're doing, I don't know, you're a mortgage officer and you're a loan officer and you're going to talk about mortgages, I would encourage everybody to have interviews because, first of all, it's fun. You get to learn a lot by talking to other people, a lot more than you learn by not talking to anybody, trust me. And if you do a good job, they're going to promote this as well. And then it's cool. Then it becomes like, hey, man, how do I diversify? How do I get different people on the show? This was fun guest. You know, can you turn me on to anybody? Or I should have this person. And your listeners don't go stale either. They're like, man, even in the newscast, it's 5 or 6 different anchors. It's not the same. You know, even 60 Minutes has 3 anchors in a show. You know, can you listen to Mike Wallace for an hour? Probably not. So for all those reasons,
when your
interview shows are good.
When you're advertising, are you advertising for them to go to your website, for them to go to Apple, for them to where are you pointing them? Are you pointing them for subscriptions and like, hey, like and subscribe, or what are you pointing
That's
at?
a good question. For me, I had a website since day one, and I have all the shows on the website, and beneath each, again, some of this is a leap of faith. So I would drive them to the web page with the particular episode. Let's say, you know, I'm marketing to your guys. So here, Joe West's episode is here, and right underneath it, it says subscribe. So you can subscribe. Now, here's where it gets tricky. I know my audience, 90% of them are on Macs. So I don't have to worry about listing all the Android places to subscribe. I don't even list any of them to me. I think I may have Google Play. But most people don't have that luxury. I'm in the entertainment field, so most people in the entertainment business are on Mac. Again, this is just happenstance. I lucked out with that. But if I didn't, I would have just had 6 or 7 different places to subscribe.
So,
you know,
your ads point them to the website. The website points them to subscription services like Spotify and whatnot.
The website has the actual show on it, so you could listen right there. And then if you like it, the subscribe thing is right underneath.
And do you ever run ads to get people purely to subscribe to their particular provider? Like, hey, this is a push to get people to subscribe to Spotify or to Apple.
No, I do not, because my thoughts on that are, first of all, I don't think you can, I would only want to do that. Let's say I'm driving to Spotify. I would only want to do that if I 100% knew the audience that's looking at my ads was listen to podcasts on Spotify. You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
I think so.
Because, okay. So look at it like this. If you listen to podcasts on iCast, which is on Cast, which is an app, and you see an ad to subscribe to something on Spotify, you're never going to click on that because you don't listen to shows on Spotify. So I would you don't mess with that. Well, you want to give people the advertise on the media in which they consume. So I would be more inclined to run an ad on Spotify if I wanted to do that.
Got it.
Now, the reason I don't do that is because and I don't know if anybody doesn't know this, the reason why Spotify has made such a massive push into podcasting is as follows. I have Apple, so I don't know what they charge. What does Spotify charge monthly? Do you know?
I think 11.
It's like,
Okay.
it's like $10.
Okay. So they're getting $10 a month from you, right? Now, appreciate that every second you listen to Spotify non-licensed products is free money for them. If you're listening to a podcast, they don't pay any money out. There's no licensing fees. There's no royalties. So they set this up to capture these people because they don't have to pay a dime for it. So they're investing in their infrastructure. And many of them will then become Spotify subscribers and start listening to Spotify music. So it's just a way, it's free content.
Yeah, I never thought of that.
Yeah. That's why a lot of these companies have done
so
this.
When you advertise, do you advertise specific episodes or the channel?
No, I advertise specific episodes because self-interest.
Okay, great.
If I'll
great
target. Yeah, I'll target.
So always drive
base
towards your website.
Well, that's for me. Yeah, but I have a website. Some people, I don't think this is smart. Just from a marketing standpoint, I'll tell you what. Some people drive. Libsyn gives you a page,
right,
that you can do. I don't think that's smart because you have no control what's on that page. The fucking link is like as long as the Emancipation Proclamation, and it's like, don't do that, And in fact, we use like this thing called Bitly, and so I bought the domain elg.fun. So it says elg.fun/West for Joe West would be yours, let's say. And that's something like
Bitly makes short URLs.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I bought that fun extension because that's going to be like, oh, this is fun. Who's going to be skeptical about that? Go to elg.fun. Okay. There's no it's, you want to
smart, very smart.
You just want to do things that everybody's on guard, man. And they should be, right? You want to just try to put as less obstacles, which is another reason I wouldn't advise you driving to Libsyn. Now they're at Libsyn, then they got to go find where to subscribe. It's too much work. No one's going to do that.
It's always really bothered me that you're going to put 10 grand a month into Facebook ads and they're going to control the platform. You're going to grow a YouTube channel to have 6 million subscribers, and then they're going to pull the plug on you because of whatever, or YouTube goes away. It's like to build a business on those sites always felt wrong to me because it just felt like, man, we're paying for all the brick and mortar here and we don't own any brick and mortar. So I like the idea of driving to your website because you always own that URL.
Yeah, you control that. And the ad, that post will stay there forever, even if you stop running the ad.
All right. So other than that, and I know you do some social media stuff. You post it on Facebook, and then you have like a premiere.
Yeah.
Are there any other critical things that you do that you attribute to the success of your podcast in regards to marketing it after it's recorded?
Consistency. You have to do things very consistently to get credibility with your listeners. And I mean that in all things. So for example, the format needs to be fairly consistent. And as an analogy, imagine, I'm talking to the baby boomers here. When you get your paper in the morning, one day you wake up and sports section is in front and then the obituary is right behind it. And it's all out of order. And then the next day it's like, oh, here's the local news. Then one of the reasons that newspaper felt so comforting is, man, I go to the sports sections in the back, business sections here, the news is here. Everything is, you know what you're getting. And when people consume content, that's what they want. Every magazine's got a format. Every newspaper's got a format. So that you need consistency in what you're doing. That doesn't mean you can't talk about different topics, but you can't be a comedy show one day, a cat show the next day, a self-development show the next day.
Me and Mike have the same problem with artists. There's some people that are so talented that they can do theater, they can do rock and roll, they can do, soul, they can do country. It's like you have to give somebody their attention span is so short. You have to find an interest they have and you have to connect and keep it the same. You have to give them something. So
yeah, and plus, if you want to keep that fan base, if you're a salsa guy and all of a sudden you're putting out a metal record, it's like, yeah, maybe Neil Young and David Bowie can do that. That's about it, man. And some of those forays weren't very good. But
that's brilliant. Is there anything else? Is it just a matter of doing that and repeating that process over and over again, and then hoping to either become better at it and be more compelling? But once you're compelling and you do these things, that's a pretty good shot of you getting an audience and capturing it and maintaining it.
Yeah, the other thing you got to be consistent with is the frequency of your episodes. Like that's the biggest thing that people whether you're doing blog posts, any kind of content based business or a venture, you do a blog post every Monday, you do an episode every Monday, do it every Monday, make the commitment. You have to. We published a newsletter in my marketing business. We had it for 10 years. Every month, like clockwork, it went out on the 19th. I don't care if I had to stay up 2 days in a row to put it together, which I generally didn't. I'm pretty organized. But people rely on this. If you're doing things that are stable, you appear stable. And generally, if you aren't stable, you're not going to do it. It's rare that you're a fucking nut job, but you're doing things stable. It's a reflection of your character, and people like that. It's comforting. It's reliable.
What do you think is the minimum amount of episodes a week you can do to grow an audience or to go from nothing into something?
Joe, like now, God, I don't even know if 5 is enough. But I mean, it's just, I don't know the right answer to that question. I know that if you are looking to set up a podcast as a side hustle to make money, don't look at it like that, because it's a long haul, man. It's not. I mean, it's a ton of work to get this thing up and going, where if you're going to do it 4 or 5 times a week, I would just say you're better off using a podcast as lead generation for a back end of a business. And then if it takes off, so let me explain what that means. Go back to let's take the most boring business in the world. You're an accountant, right? And you're looking to get tax clients. So every once a week, you have a show talking about interesting tax issues. And let's say your marketplace is business owners. So every week you have a guest on and you interview them about specific, whether it's real estate or inventory manufacturing, whatever. Every week you have a guest on. That show, and then at the end or during it, you have some commercials if you want a free review or something, whatever your offer is, you call a call to action. You put a couple of pitches there, and then people will eventually go to the website or call you for that because they like.
It's not about the podcast; it's about the accounting firm.
Yeah, right. So use that as the front end lead generation to something that you're going to do in the back end until the show gets big enough.
Right.
If it gets big enough, and then you can look at it. So I can't answer that question. Sorry.
No, that's great. Is there anything that I've read that people said you at least need to be doing twice a week to at least be high enough on people's feed with new information, so I guess it depends from once a week to 5 times a week.
I don't know. That might be the answer. I have no empirical evidence, so I can't say for sure. I don't know that answer. And because of there's over 1.4 million shows out there now.
Wow.
Right. I mean,
it's a lot of noise.
Yeah. It's hard to
find a way to cut through the noise.
And the way to cut through it, I'll tell you right now, is to be specific and don't be a generalist. That is the biggest problem I see most people having.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you could point to and that we haven't covered in regards to just to sort of the idea is that we get enough water under the boat to see if it will float, right?
Yeah.
So,
look at this like any business. In the beginning, anything you do is a grind, even if you like it. And I always look at it that you're trying to get this airplane off the ground and get it to have enough momentum where it's self-propelling. That's a grind in the beginning. I don't care what you're doing and how much you like it. There's a lot of shit work you got to do. You don't know, you don't have most of your answers. So you got to either guess, ask questions, choices and then test and see how it goes. Get feedback, talk to people, talk to your listeners, tell people on there, hey, we'd love to get your feedback. If you enjoy this show, let us know. If you have any ideas man, don't be afraid to ask for help, because you're going to get now, it doesn't mean everybody that emails you need to listen to, but ask for help, because you will get some intelligent responses out there and people that really are serious and they like your stuff and they want you to succeed. The best thing you could do is, I cannot tell you how overwhelming all the love I've gotten from my listeners and from my guests. It's I had no idea this would happen. And it's been a wonderful, if this thing ended right now, I would have gotten far more out of it than I've ever.
You have a tremendous gift though, man. You're super easy to speak to.
Yeah, I don't think you are.
This is not a coincidence.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I think
I'm gonna get my wife in here. She agrees with you.
a lot of the things that you think are second nature, and maybe you're part of just like the kind of person you are with your diligence and in being organized. A lot of those things don't come to musicians.
Thanks.
But I thought it was really comforting when you said it's like, just start, just pick up a guitar and play it. Don't worry about the strings. It's like, find the love there. And then like realize, I need to get a guitar where the action's a little bit better. Or I need to get something that's an electric guitar. I got to step up to this or that. Figure it out as you go. It's very, very doable. Real quick, to touch on the technology point, the technology involved in making a podcast is super simple. You correct me if I'm wrong. All you need is a dynamic microphone. There's different kinds of microphones, condenser mics and dynamic mics. Condenser mics need power. So like anything that requires 48 volts or anything that would require a tube and a power supply plugged into the wall separately, that's a condenser mic. You really don't want those for a podcast because they are so radiant. They listen a lot. Their pattern, what they're listening to, is a lot broader. You want something like this, which is a dynamic mic that's focused right on you. You can use an SM57. It's good enough for the President of the United States. When you go to see the pulpit that the President speaks on, they've got really interesting filters on them, so you don't recognize them as 57s. But those are two SM57s pointing at the President with those longer filters on them. You can use that's a dynamic mic. So find something that doesn't require phantom power. That's a very narrow pattern that rejects outside noise, and a little interface. I mean, that will get you started. You can worry about compressors later. You can worry about, these are probably $70 set of headphones. You can use in-ears, whatever it takes. You're probably about $200 to get started with an interface and a microphone and a mic cable and a mic stand.
Can I say the mic that I used in the beginning? It was like 60 or 70 bucks. I got an Audio-Technica ATR 2100 USB cardioid dynamic mic. It plugs right into your computer. You want the 2100, not the 2500. I found your mileage may vary, but I like the cardioid mics better, just how they pick up my voice. And I kind of I like my voice is, I guess, more deep, and I just liked how it resonated. But when I got this mic, I had to go through 2 or 3 of them because your voice is different. But don't worry about that. But just try that Audio-Technica. I think if
you get a mic that is USB, then you don't even have to worry about the interface because that will go right into your computer.
It goes, literally right into your computer, man.
And the important thing he said was dynamic. Always look for dynamic. You really don't want a condenser, even though some people do it successfully. If you're doing it from your house, where someone might be running a vacuum cleaner in the next room, you might see a guy like Louder with Crowder. That guy has like a condenser mic, I believe, but he's in a studio where it's very much controlled. So super simple. I think the goal is to get started, like what you said.
Just get started. And I just want to say one more thing. I really appreciate both of you guys like saying compliments, but I also want to tell people, I had to work real hard. I mean, these guys were very kind and they said I'm easy to talk to. That was not my nature. I had to work and I'm 56 years old, man. It took me a long time to learn how to communicate and to get some inherent quiet inside myself so that I could probably be like that. So if you're not like that, that doesn't mean you shouldn't do a show or anything for that matter. You could learn these skills or any skills you want to learn. So don't, say, well, I'm not good or I'm not outgoing or whatever. You can learn these things and it's very possible. So
lastly, choose happiness, right?
Yeah, man. Right. Absolutely.
I love that, man. I love that new tagline. It's amazing, man.
Yeah. Tell us about that. You talk about that a little bit in your bio. Tell us why you sign off with that every night.
because I always say, happiness is a choice. So choose wisely, because it was one of the most important things I've ever learned. I didn't know that until I was much older. I had a fucked up childhood and a lot of garbage up in there to fix. And I didn't know happiness was an option. It was that simple. And when I found that out, it was like, it gave me like a superpower. And it was so important that I thought maybe somebody else might benefit from that. And, I can't tell you how many email messages I get. That says, it's something like, Craig, I like your show or whatever, but I remind myself every day when my feet hit the ground that happiness is a choice, and I'm going to choose happiness. And I'm so happy that it resonates with other people.
It's fantastic.
So simple, right?
It's simple. What is the expression, Joe? It's simple, but it's not easy, or something like that.
Yeah. I buy it. I mean, I think it's compelling. Sometimes we need to be reminded. Sometimes people will say the simplest things that will change the whole world for you. And happiness can be a choice. You decide what you're going to let yourself do. It will get you in and out of situations. It'll steer you, point you in the right direction every day. And whenever you go to bed at night, you might be overwhelmed, but you can wake up the next morning and say that again. That's a beautiful thing. We get to start over every day.
And I learned that from you guys, from all the creators I've had on my show. And I have come, because all you guys, nobody goes into music to make $1 million. And the amount of joy.
They might go into it, but they don't stay in it.
Yeah, they don't stay in it. Right.
Good point, Mike.
Yeah.
But the amount of joy that I've seen all my guests have has just like validated that for me, 750 times over, to the point where I've changed I made sure I communicate this to my kids, and that they make better choices along those lines. Because I think, as you said, Joe, for the long game, it's just a healthier, happier life.
Well, I'm glad that you've made your way all the way from being a foot masseuse at World Trade Center.
Yeah, man.
the seedy underworld of foot massages down in the lower part of Manhattan.
If anybody wants a foot massage, you could deposit some money into your computer.
I'm going to give you a Bitcoin for a good foot massage.
That's classic.
You went the long way around, but you've done the thing that is so difficult, which is finding purpose and happiness in the diligence of what it is you do for a job. So, watching your pathway going through financial consulting and everything that you've from the beginning in marketing and writing the book, you finally found a place where what it is you do at night after you get away from work is what you do for work. So congratulations on that.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much. And thanks for being a part of it. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, brother. We appreciate you so much. And for sharing this. This is the stuff. I remember I worked at the post office during Christmas break at the General Mail facility in Pittsburgh. And I was one of these new guys hoping to get brought on to work at the post office and have a good job, because Pittsburgh, that's a great job. And I can remember this guy, me asking him a question, and him saying, "Man, I got mine, you get yours." Like, he wouldn't tell me. He wasn't going to tell me. And it's just like, it's not like anybody's like, there's a hierarchy in the General Mail facility in Pittsburgh. It's not a glorious job to attain. He was just like, I know how to do what it is you need to do, and I'm not going to tell you. Yeah, and I thought to myself, I don't want to be around people like that, and I don't want to be that person. So today you've proved
no secrets, man. There's no secrets. And you know what? Somebody maybe 30 different people helped me. I'm happy to put this out there if I save somebody some time,
Well, I think there's a lot of valuable things there, and we're going to go forward and start. We don't market our channel at all, and we're going to start to do that, and we're going to start to use some of the things we learned today. So
awesome,
thank you for that in advance.
Thank you, Craig.
Pleasure.
Appreciate it,
Mike.
Thanks,
Joe.
Signing off from the West Barn. We'll see you next time.